Okay, you should be able to hear me now. Hello, everyone. Um, sorry, I did not have the right mic input for a second there. Um, sorry, I'm getting started a little bit late for me. Good to see you, Lonjade, and Blue, and Nina, and Vase. Um, you might have heard I finally got to 1,000 subs yesterday. Like last night, I was sitting there setting up my monetization settings and stuff, trying to figure out what live streams I could actually monetize. Also, I hear that it's been super, super hot in the UK and Europe, and I think it's just regular levels of hot here, but I'm so sorry y'all are dealing with that. Um, and what, so a lot happened at our last stream. And it feels like it's been a million years since that happened, but I feel that way every time it's Monday. Just like the wait from Wednesday to Monday feels so momentous sometimes. But yeah, last live stream there were guns. So that happened. Um, so today we are reading chapters 196 to 200. And um by the way, speaking of getting to 1,000 subscribers and the monetization and stuff, I told it not to do mid-roll ads, at least not in a live stream. Um, the only way I would do that is if I could somehow figure out how to get the ads to only run while I'm taking a break, which I think there is a way to do that, but I don't really know how to do it. So at the moment, you should not get like a mid-roll ad, so tell me if you do, because I don't want people to get interrupted and miss parts of the stream. So that should not happen. But yeah, also, I'm at my parents' place today. I totally forgot to bring the physical copy of the book with me, but I'm reading off of the ebook version. But it just means I won't be able to give you the page numbers. So if one of you has the physical copy of the book, if you feel like putting in the page numbers for the chapters, that would be awesome. Hi, Cookie. Oh, Lonjade, you said it's meant to be even hotter tomorrow. Well, that's fun. Um, and thank you all on the congrats. And of course, YouTube is doing translating comments again, so it continues to do things that don't make sense. um, Hi, Henry. Like Henry, for some reason, when you say hi with multiple eyes, it translates it to this. I was like, I don't know what you're saying this to. Um, so I'm gonna get started. We are on chapter 196, which is called Old Man. After breakfast the next day, Xiao Qie donned his heavy armor to head to the Beiyuan training grounds. Shen Zichuan had slept little the last few days and only gotten decent rest the night before. Standing under the eaves to see Xiao Qie off, he still seemed languid. The snow had stopped overnight, and the sun shone so brightly the courtyard glistened. Settling Meng on one arm, Xiao Qie turned back to find Shen Zichuan lingering sleepily at the doorway with an unhappy expression. When will you be back? As Xiao Qie unfastened the chain on Meng's leg, Meng promptly made to pounce on Shen Zichuan. Xiao Qie held the gerfalcon down and answered, As soon as I can. Send someone to get me if anything comes up. The bright wash of sunlight made Shen Zichuan seem to glimmer. Stepping out of the light, he squinted his expressive eyes and said plaintively, Ah, yeah. Xiao Qie lunged toward this troublemaker, startling Shen Zichuan. Taking advantage of his height, Xiao Qie set an arm against the door frame and scooped Shen Zichuan closer with one hand when he tried to step back. The hanging curtain caught in his collar, but Xiao Qie didn't bother moving it out of the way. Shen Zichuan was soundly punished with a kiss. Chen Yang, busy mulling over the escort tasks they'd need to arrange after their return to border camp, paid no mind to the movement on the other end of the courtyard. Gujin saw the curtain swaying, but no trace of either man. He stripped off his gloves and said slowly, "The governor and master." Unable to find the right words, Gujin looked pointedly at Chen Yang. Chen Yang knew Gujin had been stunned that Chen Zichuan had held the discussions in his rooms last night, so he closed the book and looked toward the door. After watching for a moment, he said, Master has been hard at work on the battlefield ever since our late prince passed. He may seem fine now, but I fear his heart is like the wound on his back, still healing. It's a good thing for them to be close. After that fateful night, many had wanted to protect and coddle Xiao Qie. They'd avoided talking about that snowy night as much as possible, and watched Xiao Qie cautiously, as if he had lost his strength and was now as fragile as a vase. Yet Shen Zichuan was just the opposite. He said not a single word of consolation, but the expression in his eyes spoke volumes about how he depended on him, as if only Xiao Qie could keep the weather from being cold and the medicine from being bitter. What Shen Zichuan implied with such extreme reliance was that Xiao Qie was strong. Xiao Qie didn't need to be treated like porcelain. He was iron. He was steel. He was Shen Zichuan's Hongyan Mountains. And that was exactly how Xiao Qie responded. He was Shen Zichuan's Hongyan Mountains. That's beautiful. I love them. Yeah, Blue, oh how I miss them indeed. Oh, you flipped to remind yourself of where we were and got jump scared by the art. Oh yeah. Yeah, that was some art. Shen Zichuan had instructed Fei Sheng to summon Gao Zhongxiong before the meeting began. When Shen Zichuan arrived, he found him waiting outside Zhou Gui's study. He immediately dispensed with the formalities. "I've arranged for a tailor to take your measurements. You'll have winter clothes delivered to your residence in a few days. It's been cold recently. Do you have enough charcoal for the stove at home?" Gao Zhongxiong had formerly been an advisor to Han Jin, who had pursued the imperial army out of Chudu. When he first came to Cizhou, he knew Shen Zichuan wouldn't trust him, which was why he had taken such an ill-advised step as bribing the Yemen runner for a lowly position. It was only because Yao Wenyu had recommended him so highly that he had gotten the job in the Yemen after all. But Shen Zichuan rarely spoke to him directly. Standing before him now, Gao Zhongxiong was somewhat unnerved. Whenever Gao Zhongxiong was nervous, sweat poured off him, and he couldn't help stuttering, an unfortunate side effect of the ridicule he'd suffered in Dancheng. He wiped the sweat on his brow, his chin tucked so low it was about to jab into his chest as he muttered, "Yes, your lordship. Your lordship." The advisors had all taken their places inside, and Kong Ling stood under the eaves waiting for Shen Zichuan to enter. Gao Zhongxiong knew he was a clumsy conversationalist, and so grew even more anxious, sweating as he tried to finish his sentence. Shen Zichuan recalled how bold and spirited Gao Zhongxiong had been just a year ago, as he knelt in the pouring rain to denounce the eunuch faction. He listened earnestly, then replied, "You're not married at present, but if the monthly salary from the Yemen is insufficient to support you, just let my men know." Gao Zhongxiong had assumed Shen Zichuan detested him, and that it was only for Yao Wenyu's sake that Shen Zichuan didn't voice it. He hadn't expected him to be so amicable. For a moment, his emotions got the better of him, and his voice hitched. "It's all thanks to the grace and kindness of the governor that I have a job in the Yemen in the first place. The salary is issued on time every month. How can I ask for more?" Shen Zichuan added, even more gently, "You are a man of letters in my employ. You mustn't keep belittling yourself like this." A multitude of emotions swelled in Gao Zhongxiong's heart as he wiped his tears. He was genuinely touched that Shen Zichuan was even willing to use him, much less show him this level of respect. As the saying went, a gentleman would die for the one who truly understood and appreciated him. He was wholeheartedly willing to follow Shen Zichuan. Before he could voice any more words of gratitude, Shen Zichuan raised a hand to stop him. He gestured for Gao Zhongxiong to keep up as they entered the study. Zizhou had initially intended to borrow a general from the Libei armored cavalry to lead their attack on Fanzhou. But seeing as King Yi was already the subject of intense public resentment, and Fanzhou was essentially a husk, Shen Zichuan changed his plans. Oh, I wonder when they're going to get the news that King Yi was killed. Oh, Blue, you said anyone else thinks Shen Zichuan rarely speaks to him directly because his courtesy name is Shen Wei. I wonder if that bothers him. I didn't think about that. Yeah, I wonder if they're going to go into that. Rather than rely on Li Bei, he appointed the commander of the Zizhou garrison troops, Yin Chong, to lead the charge. Yin Chong had been a high-ranking officer in the Zizhou garrison prior to the fall of Zhongbo. After the garrison's former commander perished in battle, Zhou Gui had promoted him into his current post. And until Shen Zichuan came to Zizhou, Yin Chong was the commander of a one-man army. This full-bearded man was about the same age as Ji Gong. An avid drinker and a very reluctant bather, he was notably unkempt. He could be considered kindred spirits with Chao Tianya in a way. And in fact, before Chao Tianya quit drinking, the two of them often drank together. Are we saying that Chao Tianya is notably unkempt and doesn't like bathing? That sounds like a dig at Chao Tianya. Upon hearing of the appointment, Kongling said hesitantly, Yin Chong is advanced in age, and he hasn't stepped onto the battlefield for several years. I'm afraid he may not be up to the task. Surprisingly, Zhou Gui disagreed. A veteran general has his own advantages. If the governor is willing to assign him the command, he surely won't let us down. Along with Yin Chong, Shen Zichuan added, surprising them yet again, Fei Sheng will join the deployment to Fanzhou as an attendant officer. Yao Wenyu's wide sleeves bulged from the cat curled on his lap. He covered her furry head with a hand. Now that the roads are passable, Zizhou and Chazhou can supply the garrison's provisions. The march to Fanzhou will take only a day. That's right. Shen Zichuan set his fan on his lap and looked up at the others. Time is of the essence. We must obtain Fanzhou and Dongzhou. Let's fight a quick battle, gentlemen. A chorus of acknowledgments arose from the group, and with that, they began to discuss arrangements for filling the vacancies in Fanzhou's and Dongzhou's Yemen, as if the city was already theirs. Yin Chong received his command soon after. He would lead Zizhou's troops, while Fei Sheng would take 40 members of the Embroidered Uniform Guard and join the expedition as part of the entourage. Fei Sheng met Yin Chong just before setting off. This commander's hair was even whiter than Ji Gong's. He was short and stocky, with a crimson drunkard's nose. Fei Sheng led Yin Chong's horse over and made his obeisance. Yin Chong, swaying slightly with inebriation, mumbled, "Rise." Fei Sheng had taken a page out of Chao Tianya's book and brought along some fine wine as a show of respect. The old general opened it up for a sniff and commended it in a voice so booming Fei Sheng nearly lost his grip on the reins. Seeing that Yin Chong was about to sample the wine this very moment, Fei Sheng hurriedly moved to stop him. With an apologetic smile, he said, "Elder Yin, please hold on. This wine is strong, and it'll be hard to travel if you're drunk. Let's wait until we return in triumph, and I shall play host while we drink ourselves into oblivion." Yin Chong's nose twitched. While Fei Sheng was talking, he had already taken several gulps of the wine as though parched. The wine invigorated him and turned his nose even redder. He breathed out a few puffs of hot air and thumped Fei Sheng on the shoulder. Loudly, he said, "Lad, there's no need to worry. I've traversed Zhongbo for over a dozen years. I could find my way to Fanzhou with my eyes closed. The more I drink, the more sober I am. This is just a little pick-me-up for the road. Sure. You tell yourself that. Fei Sheng estimated Yin Chang's age. If it wasn't Fanzhou they were attacking, he would have been tempted to walk away on the spot. Which part of this senile old man is ready to fight a battle? But aloud, he said with an easy laugh, "Sure thing. I'm at your command this trip." He led the horse over to Yin Chang and asked, "Shall I help you mount?" Yin Chang tied the wineskin to his waist, patted it, and chuckled at Fei Sheng. "Heh, just you watch. I can get on myself." Whoa! Seeing Yin Chang's foot slip from the stirrup, the sharp-eyed Fei Sheng deftly supported the old man. "Steady there, sir." Now that Yin Chang's considerable weight was on him, Fei Sheng realized this old man boasted a pair of thick, sturdy legs. He helped Yin Chang onto his horse. The old man was quite the character. Who knew, maybe he was truly capable. But not long after, Yin Chang nodded off on his horse, and numerous times he nearly slid right out of the saddle. It was only thanks to Fei Sheng assigning a man to keep an eye on him that Yin Chang didn't tumble off. Zizhou wasn't far from Fanzhou, only a 2-day journey. Yet Fei Sheng had his heart in his throat the entire way, fearing the commanding general would fall to his death before they even crossed the border. Despite his worries, the journey was uneventful, and they arrived at their destination without mishap. After pitching camp, Fei Sheng waited for Yin Chang to discuss plans for the siege, but the old man went right into his tent and lay down to sleep. In no time, his snores reverberated through the camp like claps of thunder, and no amount of noise could stir him. Fei Sheng stood outside the tent and looked around. The Zizhou garrison was full of new recruits. Yin Chang hadn't even arranged for a night patrol squad, and as such, the men were running to and fro like fools without a scrap of military dignity. How the hell were they going to fight like this? Blue, you said close enough. Joe Jashu, welcome back. Joe's a shoe. I can speak. I can say words. Yeah, so much for being a functioning alcoholic, huh? Fei Sheng was sorely tempted to write a letter to Shen Sichuan right then and there. The embroidered uniform guard had no choice but to step in and conduct the night patrol themselves. Fei Sheng guarded the camp until daybreak. His eyes were bloodshot as he watched Yin Chang step out of his tent with a new spring in his step. He forced a smile from his stiff, frozen face. "Elder Yin, seems you slept well, huh?" Fei Sheng rubbed his numb hands together and flexed his toes in his boots. "So, when should we lay siege to the city?" Yin Chang sat down and poured himself more wine from the wineskin, although he only drank 2 small cups today. No rush, no rush. But the command Fei Sheng had received was to fight a quick battle. There's been no wind or snow for several days. If we miss the good weather, the battle will be much harder to fight. Yin Chang sipped his wine and glanced in Fanzhou's direction. His beard shook as he smacked his lips. "What you in such a rush for? I don't think it's time yet." The old man's afraid, Fei Sheng thought. The embroidered uniform guard had no record of Yin Chang. When Fei Sheng had been gathering intelligence, he'd personally flipped through Zizhou's archives. Yin Chang had no meritorious achievements prior to the fall of Zhongbo. The reason he was promoted to commander was simply because every other general in Zizhou was dead. That, and his good fortune in meeting a nice fellow like Zhou Gui, who promoted him on the basis of his seniority. Yin Chang hadn't made himself known as a leader even after his promotion to commander. He was drinking when Zhou Gui and Kongling reclaimed the wilderness for farmland, and he was still drinking when the bandits of Mount Luo, led by Lei Jingzhe, harassed Zizhou time and again. Even after the re-establishment of the Zizhou garrison troops, he'd seemed more ornamental than functional. He had played no role in their organization or training. Shen Zichuan's reasons for deploying Yin Chong now were twofold. For one, Sizhou had no other generals, but Fanzhou was also an easy target. The Sizhou garrison troops needed a chance to stand on their own 2 feet, and this was a good opportunity. The commanding general didn't need to be a genius. All he needed to do was go with the flow and capture Fanzhou at the right moment. That would suffice. While Fei Sheng mulled this over, Yin Chong sat down opposite him, kicked off his boots, and scratched his feet. Fei Sheng wanted to talk about the battle, but was too overwhelmed by the stench of the old man's feet to say a word. He jumped up and cupped his fists in salute to Yin Chong before running off for some fresh air. Yin Chong wiggled his toes and picked the crevices clean. Oh no, he had gone without a bath for almost 2 months now, and even he could no longer stand his own stink as he held his foot and muttered to himself. Thank you for that information. Shen Zichuan had left He Rigu and his scorpions at the Beiyuan training grounds. Their presence there was not appreciated by the Sizhou garrison, who regularly subjected them to a variety of verbal attacks. Only the mediation of the embroidered uniform guard had kept the 2 groups from coming to blows thus far. Despite the cold, He Rigu had stripped to the waist to bathe at the well. As he trudged back carrying his wooden tub, he saw the gates of the camp wide open. A column of dark, heavy armor swept in, horses stomping through the thin veil of snow and sending mud splattering over He Rigu as they passed. He cursed under his breath and swiped at his face, only to see that the horse in the lead had turned back toward him. He Rigu recognized Snowcrest. He raised the tub in his hand and called politely, "Hello, Arya." Xiaoqia was so heavily armored that not even his eyes were visible. On horseback, his strapping stature made him an even more imposing figure. Snowcrest closed in on He Rigu, forcing him to crane his head back to look up at its rider. "The governor wants to keep me around." He Rigu was still wearing his cloth shoes, the backs crushed under his heels. He scanned the Li Bei armored cavalry, who were eyeing him menacingly, and looked at Xiaoqia again. "I think he's right." "I brought the horses." Xiaoqia's voice was low and deep. "Bring your men to the training grounds." He Rigu knew what Xiaoqia wanted to see. Over the past few days, he'd been training here with the Li Bei armored cavalry. He set down the wooden tub and pulled his shoes on properly. "I'll bring along my iron hammers. You can test out our new military formations." Snowcrest snorted hot puffs of air. The heavily armored steed inched closer again, forcing He Rigu to edge back. "New formations?" Xiaoqia asked. He Rigu took a step back and explained himself. "I learned them from an old man." He raised a finger to his face. "An old man with a red nose." That's the end of the chapter. That's interesting. Henry, not Snowcrest is racist. Oh, hi, do we have a new person? Hello, Marty. Oh, you're new and on volume 4, speedrunning to catch up. Oh, that's great. You're not too far away. Henry, you said this is not what I meant when I said I'd like Danmei to have more people who were not conventionally attractive. Right. Blue, here's Lanzhou, here's Sa'an, here's their son Meng, and here's their other son, the racist horse Snowcrest. Oh my god. I can't deal. A new QJJ meme. So we are on chapter 197, which is called Unexpected. The un is in parentheses. Fei Sheng couldn't for the life of him figure out what Yin Chong was up to. The Sizhou garrison troops had been in Fanzhou for 2 days, yet they'd done nothing during this interval. The few times Yin Chong left his tent had been to take aimless strolls after his meals. Fei Sheng was burning with anxiety, but he was only here to observe. He was no military inspector. Several times, Fei Sheng almost wrote to Shen Zichuan. But what if Yin Chong turned out to be capable? If the garrison troops returned in triumph after all, he would be the rat who tattled behind the hero's back. Whatever reasonable justifications he'd had for complaining would have gone out the window. On this day, Fei Sheng had lain down to rest around dawn. He slept until nightfall, when he was shaken awake by his subordinate. Bad news, the guard reported. The old crook is gone. Fei Sheng lurched up and grabbed his boots. As he hopped and stomped into them, he asked in disbelief, "Gone?" He ran? Lifting the tent flap, he stepped out to see that though the entire campground was still illuminated, only 1,000 or so garrison troops were left. His heart pounded in his chest. It's over. If they lost Fanzhou, his bright future was as good as gone. But a second later he thought, that can't be right. No matter how he looked at it, they couldn't lose a battle with Fanzhou. All they had to do was take the city, and they would be rewarded. This campaign would cement Yin Chong's position as garrison commander. There was no reason for him to flee. Besides, half of Zhongbo was under Shen Zichuan's control. Even if Yin Chong deserted, he had nowhere to go, not unless he threw in his lot with King Yi. Fei Sheng looked up in the direction of Fanzhou's city wall. That old fart better not turn traitor right before the battle. A whistle sounded. The embroidered uniform guard on night patrol rode into camp, reporting before they even dismounted. There are troops on the move 3 li to the southeast. Fei Sheng strode toward them. The garrison troops or those Fanzhou bastards? They're heading this way. The embroidered uniform guard hung his riding crop on his pommel and set a hand on the hilt of his sword. Likely a night attack. Fei Sheng's heart sank. From Chudu to Zhongbo, he had never once served as a general. He had no experience leading troops into battle. He turned to survey the campground. So the commander fled. What about the second in command? The platoon commander? Get him out here. The embroidered uniform guard behind him answered, he's gone too. Fei Sheng was regretting everything now. Had he known Yin Chong was so unreliable, he would have dragged Gu Jin along, by force if he had to. At the very least, Gu Jin could have stood in for the missing commander. He forced himself to calm and asked his subordinate, how many are left from the garrison troops? 1,000. The guard clarified, exactly 1,000. The old man left us a nice round number. Well, I thank his entire family for that, Fei Sheng ground out. What else could he do? Fei Sheng braced himself. He would have to step up, however reluctantly. He shouted for the soldiers to extinguish the torches and prepare to evacuate. If nothing else, they couldn't remain in the camp as live targets for the enemy. They would have more options if they could get out onto the snowy fields. But they had only put out half the fires when Fei Sheng caught the sound of the enemy's footfalls on the wind. Abandon the camp. Fei Sheng knew from the sound alone that they were outnumbered. Retreat. The remaining soldiers tightened their belts and dragged their blades along behind the embroidered uniform guard. They ran with all their might, making for a sorry sight as they tossed armor and weapons aside to lighten the load as they fled. Fei Sheng was mounted, but he didn't dare leave these 1,000 men behind and escape to Suzhou with only the embroidered uniform guard. He could imagine Shen Zichuan's wrath on learning he had lost all the soldiers before the battle had even begun. Fei Sheng had run only a few li when he heard the sounds of soldiers up ahead, moving to surround them under cover of darkness. The troops from Suzhou had been camped here several days, giving Fanzhou plenty of time to get a clear grasp of their routes. They had sent soldiers to both the front and rear of the camp in preparation for rounding up their would-be attackers in one fell swoop. Fei Sheng was cornered. He could neither advance nor retreat. This was completely different from the battle he'd fought on the tower in Duzhou. Now he was exposed in the wilderness with nothing to provide cover. Perhaps his 1,000 soldiers might ward off a small ambush, but they were much too weak to resist an onslaught from a force several times their size. The Fanzhou soldiers closed in around them. These men were an even more motley crew than the Zhezhou garrison troops. They had no armor, and all of them carried different weapons. As the circle of Zhezhou soldiers contracted, the Fanzhou soldiers swarmed toward them like a colony of ants. The soldiers from the garrison troops were pressed right up against Fei Sheng's horse. Wave after wave of enemy troops advanced from all directions, crowding the garrison troops until they were packed shoulder to shoulder with no room to maneuver. Their only slim chance of survival was to fight. Fei Sheng sucked in a sharp breath. He hesitated for merely a fraction of a second before slashing his blade across his horse's throat. Hand covered in hot blood, he raised his saber and shouted, "We are all trapped beasts here. Fight like your lives depend on it. If we can't break out of this encirclement, this ground is our tomb." The soldiers were terrified. When they'd seen Fei Sheng on his horse, they'd worried he would flee on his own, which had demoralized them further. All they wanted to do was kneel and beg the enemy for mercy. Fei Sheng's demonstration of solidarity instantly boosted their morale. I don't think he had to do all that, though. He knew well the importance of taking the lead in battle. Even before he'd finished speaking, he was charging toward the enemy with his sword drawn, leading the men northwest in a desperate bid to break through the encirclement. A bellow suddenly echoed from the southeast, and a column of soldiers crashed into the ranks of the Fanzhou troops like a sharp blade through the gut, tearing their formation apart with terrible speed. Blood sprayed in all directions. In no time, 8 ranks of troops had sliced their way in. Freshly drunk, Yin Chong's face was so flushed it was impossible to tell if it was from the alcohol or the cold. He snorted as he leapt joyfully down from his horse. Spotting Fei Sheng over the heads of hundreds of men, he called in a booming voice, "Oh, you're still alive." Blade stuck in an enemy soldier, Fei Sheng kicked the man in the chest and condensed all his feelings into a single word: fuck. Yin Chong had used him as bait. A total of 8,000 men from the Zhezhou garrison troops had been mobilized for this mission. Originally, there should have been no need for such a strategy to take down Fanzhou. But as soon as they'd crossed into enemy territory, Yin Chong had sensed something amiss. He had long heard King Yi didn't permit the commoners of Fanzhou to flee to other prefectures, and had installed roadblocks all along the borders to stop them. Yet Zhezhou's troops hadn't encountered any obstructions when they crossed into the prefecture. In fact, they hadn't come across a single Fanzhou soldier at all. King Yi had received the declaration of war. If he intended to surrender, he should have opened the gates to welcome them. But not only did he ignore the declaration, he'd recalled the troops at the border. He was clearly concentrating his forces in preparation for a fight with the Zhezhou garrison troops. Yeah, I wonder when they're gonna, find out about King Yi. Yin Chong guessed that to improve their odds, Fanzhou would transfer soldiers from Dongzhou. They would only dare meet Zhezhou head-on when they had the numbers to crush their attackers. The old man was a crafty sort. Knowing he hadn't brought enough men to face the full numbers of 2 prefectures, he left Fei Sheng as bait for the Fanzhou soldiers. He waited for the enemy to gather en masse, then used a dagger formation to launch a surprise attack from behind, breaking their formation before cutting them down one by one. As Fei Sheng wiped his blade clean, he saw those dagger squads, first to engage in the battle, cutting through the enemy forces like hot knives through tofu, fracturing Fanzhou's ranks, and making it impossible for them to form up again. The blades of Yin Chong's squads faced outward on all sides. It was a battle formation clearly drawn from the techniques Lu Guangbai used to fight the Biansha horsemen. The narrow columns, however, were Yin Chong's own innovation, turning Lu Guangbai's square-shaped war chariot into a long, slender dagger. These dagger squads were ruthless and swift. The moment they pierced the enemy formation, they tore it apart from within. The Fanzhou soldiers, unarmored as they were, had no time to cover their asses. In the blink of an eye, they were chopped into mincemeat. This old man is really something. Fei Sheng's confidence soared. Victory was within their grasp. But before he could open his mouth to shout, Yin Chong's leg swept out and knocked him off his feet. The old general might have been advanced in age, but his martial arts were the real deal. Those powerful legs sent Fei Sheng tumbling to the ground. A blade sliced through the air where his head had been with a soft whistle of steel. The Fanzhou soldiers were now beating a hasty retreat. Waving his blade, Yin Chong chased after them and hollered, "Where are you running off to, you bastards?" Fanzhou had gathered all its troops for this offensive. Their attackers tonight represented the enemy's entire main force. If Suzhou could defeat them now, King Yi would lose any hope of resistance. The morale of the Fanzhou troops was already crushed, while the spirits of the Suzhou garrison troops were at an all-time high. This was the moment to clinch a decisive win. Yin Chong would never let the fleeing soldiers return to the city. Fei Sheng climbed to his feet and raced after Yin Chong. But who could have guessed the old man had such amazing footwork? He was astonishingly fast as he crashed through the night. Fei Sheng could barely keep up. They pursued the enemy for a few li before Fei Sheng realized where they were heading. He was about to call out to Yin Chong when he heard the thunder of hooves. Reinforcements! Fei Sheng pumped his legs so fast they nearly cramped as he tried to catch Yin Chong and drag him back to safety. "Elder Yin, Fanzhou has reinforcements." Fei Sheng was like Gu Jin. He had an unusually keen sense of sight and hearing. He had been given few opportunities to march with an army and therefore didn't have Gu Jin's ability to identify the composition of troops by sound alone. Even so, he could tell the sound of these horses' hooves was heavier than normal. They couldn't be ordinary cavalry. The night was starless. Snowdrifts stretched across the wild horizon. Flurries skittered along the mounds, whispering in the wind and banking at the feet of the Suzhou garrison troops. Yin Chong was as stubborn as a bull. His ruddy nose, deadened by one too many cups of wine, failed to catch the scent in the air even when directly downwind. But upon charging to the fore, he caught sight of the small troop of cavalry in the distance. Fine snow whipped into Fei Sheng's face. As the flakes melted against his skin, he caught the smell of gunpowder. All his hair stood on end. He skidded to a halt and threw out an arm, shouting a warning to the embroidered uniform guard behind him. "Muskets!" Okay. I was really hoping that the people with guns would be on our side. I'm starting to question whether that is the case. Oh, yeah, literally outgunned. Literally. Right, so Fei Sheng offed his horse for nothing. Oh goodness, what's the, illustration you were talking about, Blue? Ugh, they really are outmanned and outgunned. The word was hardly out of his mouth when sparks burst from the darkness, descending on them like a meteor shower. Fei Sheng sprang into the air like a tiger and threw himself at Yin Chong's back, sending the old man tumbling into the snow. A resounding bang slammed through his skull like a club to the head. So explosive his ears were ringing. They'd miscalculated. Fei Sheng's back, shredded by shrapnel, burned with searing pain. He propped himself up with one arm and shook his head hard to clear it. He couldn't even hear his own voice, but he shouted down at Yin Chong, pinned to the ground beneath him. "Those things only work at close range. Retreat, now." He'd seen brass muskets in the armory of the 8th Grade Battalions back in Chudu. They were a weapon delegated solely to the Chun Chuan Battalion of the 8th Grade Battalions. Their use was strictly regulated by the Imperial Court, and the schematic for their construction safe-kept by the Ministry of War itself. Xiao Jie and Shen Zichuan had both had their eyes on the muskets at some point, but neither had managed to get their hands on the designs. No wonder this cavalry had stood unmoving until now. They were loading their firearms. Who knew how long they'd waited in the dark, observing the battle? They obviously weren't aiming for the Suzhou garrison troops as a whole, but for Yin Chong himself. As the saying went, to kill a snake, one must strike 7 inches below its head. Yin Chong was the most vital point of the Suzhou garrison troops. Crush him, and the battle was finished. Yin Chong had been utterly blindsided by this development. The old man thrashed in the snow, covering his ears as he shouted in alarm. Where the fuck did this thunder come from? Fei Sheng had no time to explain to this old hick. He clambered to his feet and dragged Yin Chong away from the cavalry, stumbling through the snow. Yin Chong yanked his hand away, craning his neck for one more look. Another sharp crack rang out behind them. This time, the barrage scraped Yin Chong's buttocks, making him holler in pain. Fei Sheng thought Yin Chong had taken a direct hit. In a moment of panic, he cried, "Don't you dare die now!" Whatever else happened tonight, Fei Sheng had to keep this old man alive. Shen Zichuan was in dire need of generals, and Yin Chong would no doubt be of great use in the future. More importantly, if Yin Chong died here, then Fei Sheng, despite being a stranger to warfare, would return in disgrace. There was no knowing whether he could even retain his original post, much less look forward to any kind of bright future. Shen Zichuan still had Xiao Tianya. Fei Sheng was far from indispensable. No matter what, Yin Chong could not die. The last volley seemed to have put the fear in him. Yin Chong took to his heels, covering his head as he ran. Fei Sheng didn't need to pull him along. Within a few steps, he'd left Fei Sheng in the dust, praying as he ran. Strike anyone but me. This old man has never done a bad thing in his life. Strike anyone but... Bullshit. Fei Sheng, following right on Yin Chong's heels, felt his fury grow. He caught up with a sudden burst of strength and hurled some choice curses. You devious old crook. Weren't you the one who left me as bait? Yin Chong turned his head to protest. Deception is the art of war. Deception. They dashed frantically through the wilderness without daring to slow. Fortunately, the enemy seemed to have no intent to pursue them, and withdrew after chasing the Suzhou garrison troops half a li. After running half the night and fighting with the Fanzhou troops for the other half, the Suzhou troops were utterly drained. It was bitterly cold, yet every one of them was drenched in sweat and bent double, panting like an ox. As Fei Sheng wiped his sweat and caught his breath, realization hit him. He turned to look at the first glimmer of dawn on the horizon and spat hard on the ground. We've been tricked. By the time the military reports made their way back to Suzhou, it was late into the night. Clad in a loose-fitting robe, Shen Zichuan read over Fei Sheng's report in front of his advisors. The study was silent. After seeing the expression on the governor's face, no one dared make a sound. Everyone had expected Fanzhou to be easy pickings. No one was prepared for a tough fight. The Suzhou garrison troops had prepared for half a year, and Shen Zichuan had invited both of the Libei armored cavalry and the Imperial Army to train them. Yet their first battle had been hopelessly botched. Anyone would be infuriated. The pin-drop silence was finally broken by a long spate of coughs from Yao Wenyu. Hand covering his mouth, he said, "Your lordship, please be appeased for the moment. The court has always had strict prohibitions on firearms. Their appearance in Fanzhou is truly unexpected. Even if King Yi is in possession of such powerful weapons, his defeat remains inevitable." Yu Xiaozai had only just returned from Duanzhou, and his butt had yet to warm his chair. Fearing Shen Zichuan would punish the garrison troops, he braved the solemn atmosphere to speak on their behalf. Don't you be getting head up now, my lord. I forgot he had an accent. Ugh. Crap, he'd forgotten to switch to the standard dialect. Yu Xiaozai slapped his knee in chagrin, and the advisors around him promptly bowed their heads even lower. But the interruption from Yu Xiaozai had cooled Shen Zichuan's anger somewhat. He folded the letter, his expression softening slightly. Only then did the others dare to breathe. Yuan Zhuo is right, Kongling added quietly. King Yi has firearms, but they won't change the tide. Fanzhou is running short on grain. Even if he shuts the gates and locks himself in, there's no way out for him. But it's rather strange, Yao Wenyu said, lowering his hand. If King Yi had muskets all this time, how could he have been forced into such a corner? He could have raised the money he needed to recruit new soldiers by simply selling a few to the Mount Law bandits. Moreover, this battle doesn't seem like King Yi's style. Recalling what Yao Wenyu had said just a few days ago, Zhou Gui paled. Could it be that King Yi has already been killed by bandits in Fanzhou, as Yuan Zhuo anticipated? This battle sounds rather odd to me, too. Zhou Gui knew Yin Chong well. His promotion of the general was not as Fei Sheng had assumed. He truly felt that Yin Chong was capable on the battlefield. If King Yi also possessed such a talented commander, then Fanzhou should have launched an attack on Sizhou months ago. Kongling was also getting suspicious. Fei Sheng said the same in his report. It indeed doesn't seem like something King Yi would do. Silence returned to the study as everyone waited for Shen Zichuan to speak. When he raised his eyes, his gaze was frosty. Send a message back to Yin Chong. Either the garrison troops return in triumph after 7 days, or he can come serve me his own head on a platter. Shen Zichuan had given the garrison troops ample provisions and equipped them with armor and weaponry of the highest quality. If his new force couldn't even take Fanzhou, he could forget all his grand, ambitious plans for the future. One mountain could not be ruled by 2 tigers. After this spring, Zhongbo could have only one master. It didn't matter to him who currently ruled within its walls. Shen Zichuan was dead set on taking Fanzhou. That's the end of the chapter. Blue, it's not fair that they're both hot. True. So, I guess I don't want to make an assumption, but it sounds like it is maybe the bandits who have the guns now, which is concerning. I'm hoping that we can turn this tide into something positive somehow, but I don't know how that's going to develop. I certainly don't know how Shen Zichuan and Xiao Qia are going to end up being the ones with the guns in this situation. But I guess things couldn't be too easy for them. That would just not be fair. So we will just have to see how that shakes out. Blue, you said the mountain can be ruled by 2 tigers if the tigers are gay. I agree. So I am going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. And, hold on, why is my computer doing a thing? Sorry. So I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, we will be on chapter 198, which is called Yin Chong. So be right back. Hello, I am back. And I've just been thinking about how bad it is that possibly bandits, maybe, question mark, have guns, and I am scared. Like, I didn't really think about how bad this could be last time. I was just excited there were guns, and now I'm like, oh god, there's guns. What do we do now? How do we get on the other side of this situation? Also, I'm thinking about the last chapter title. It was unexpected. It was in a parentheses, unexpected. And I'm like, why wasn't the chapter title just unexpected without the parentheses? And I feel like there's some meaning to that I don't like fully understand, and it just has me questioning things. Oh, Vase, you said, I assume the son of the former ruling family took over. Interesting. Yeah, that would make sense. I'm curious to see what happened. Oh, for the unexpected. The old man being competent and also guns. See, I'm still like, so both of those things were unexpected, but like the being in parentheses makes me think, are they implying that there's someone for who this was expected, and why would that be? Or am I just like overthinking it? I don't know. um, but yeah, we are on chapter 198, Yin Chong. After the battle last night, Fei Sheng no longer dared underestimate Yin Chong. The power of his dagger formation had been staggering. Fei Sheng had never even heard of such a tactic. If not for the sudden appearance of the muskets, Sizhou's troops would have been on the other side of the city walls come morning. Having been startled out of his drunken stupor by the firearms, a sober Yin Chong held his bowl in his hands and tilted his head, thinking, what in the heck were those things? Fei Sheng was staking their victory entirely on this old man. Seeing Yin Chong's bowl empty, he hurried to fill it again with dry rations. Muskets. Have you never heard of them before, sir? Yin Chong shook his head like a rattledrum. He had spent most of his life in Sizhou. The highest-ranking official he'd ever met was Zhou Gui. He couldn't even list out all the 8 great battalions, much less their special characteristics. He was a country bumpkin through and through, a barely literate man who had never read a single book on warfare, and relied entirely on intuition to feel his way through battles. I sure haven't. What's a musket? It has a bang like a thunderclap. Yin Chong crushed the dry rations in his bowl. We'll be blown to smithereens before we get anywhere near them. How on earth are we supposed to fight against that? They only work up close. Fei Sheng scooted toward Yin Chong. Both were equally filthy, covered in blood from head to toe. Cupping his hands, Fei Sheng made a circle the size of a gun muzzle and showed it to Yin Chong. The reason the cavalry didn't move with the rest of the troops yesterday, was because they were loading their muskets. It takes effort to get the shot to fire from this opening, and it only works at close range. They surprised us this time. Damn it, now that I think about it, it's possible they only had a handful of muskets and fired them just to scare us. Yin Chong finally understood. Oh, they're like firecrackers. You are absolutely correct, sir. Think of them as firecrackers. They can't hit you if you run far enough. Fearing Yin Chong would be too cowed by the firearms to launch another attack, Fei Sheng went to great pains to explain their limitations. Think about it. If these things were really that effective, why did the Chun Chuan battalion only use them in exhibitions for the Emperor? They simply don't work that well in real battles. Fei Sheng wasn't lying. Why had the Chun Chuan battalion kept the muskets in reserve all this time? Precisely because they were hard to use. Loading them took time. Use them in street fights, and the musket men would still be in the midst of loading the shot when the enemy's blades reached their throats. But use them against a more distant enemy, and the lethality of the firearms plummeted. What was more, the powerful recoil made it difficult to aim correctly. They even burn asses. Yin Chong was still nursing a grudge over the shrapnel that had gotten him last night. He stared into the campfire. Are these things expensive? Terribly. Fei Sheng soaked his own dry rations in his bowl of water and wolfed the whole thing down. And even the embroidered uniform guard doesn't have the designs. They're manufactured by the Ministry of Works, under the strict supervision of the Ministry of War. Every batch has a limited quantity. They engrave numbers on them and everything. Yin Chong bared his stained yellow teeth at Fei Sheng in a grin. Then fuck it. I was worried those firecrackers were cheap. Fanzhou is so poor right now they can't even make solid shits. There's no way they're using pricey stuff like that all the time. The short range is great news. I know better than they do. They can't hunker like turtles in there for their whole lives. Doors across the city swung free and slammed under the violent howl of the north wind. The streets of Fanzhou were strewn with corpses. King Yi's tattered banner fluttered in the snow as beggars fought over it to keep themselves warm. The entrance to the gay men was crammed with hundreds of people, most of them weak and infirm, squeezed against each other to get out of the wind. All the young and healthy men and their families had either been abducted by bandits or hoodwinked by King Yi into joining his army. These people, so famished they were skin and bones, were all there to beg for food. This winter wind was so bone-chilling. People were dying from the cold every night. It's a good thing Brother Hua wishes to open the granaries and distribute grain to the people. Inside the Yemen, Yang Qiu, one of Fanzhou's resident bandits, slumped in an armchair with one leg propped across his knee. Grinning broadly, he said, "We're all for it, but the Suzhou garrison troops are right at our city gates, and the soldiers on the front line can't go hungry. As long as the soldiers don't starve, you can distribute the grain to whoever you want." Both sides of King Yi's former hall were packed with people standing or sitting, all bandits from Fanzhou and Dongzhou. Yin Chong had been correct in his guess. To counter the Suzhou garrison troops, King Yi had brought together troops from both prefectures, in hope of bargaining with Shen Zichuan when the time came. Nobody had known he'd invited a wild beast to live in his own home. In the end, Huo Lingyun had collaborated with those very same bandits to kill him. Sitting on King Yi's bandit throne, Huo Lingyun said, "The city has run out of food. I'm asking all of you, my brothers, lend me some grain to feed the people." Shen Zichuan sealed off the routes to the west, and the traveling merchants no longer dare come this way. I've been eating fucking stale grain since the 10th month. Yang Cho felt bitter just thinking about it. Hell, I was thinking of asking you people for grain. Old Fong the 10th, weren't you working hand in glove with King Yi? You've been licking his balls all this time. Don't you sit here and pretend to be poor. This Fong the 10th had an insatiable appetite for young men. He was so drained from his years of debauchery that his face had taken on a sallow pallor. Clenching a handful of walnuts, he sneered. What a bunch of bull. Don't look at me. My stores were added to the military rations long ago. I'm already feeding ingrates like you. The fuck we fighting a battle for when we've no fucking food? Yang Cho spat. Might as well run while we can. Run? Fong the 10th snorted. Everything to the northwest's been choked off by Shen Zichuan. Either you go south to Tianfei Watchtower and beg Marshal Qi to let you join her army, or you ford the Chaosha River and work with those Biansha horsemen. Wasn't Shen Zichuan planning to attack Duanzhou in the second month? I say we mess up the game for him and knock a gap out of his claim on Zhongbo. Will he still dare throw his weight around then? These men were all bandits. First, they'd heard Shen Zichuan and Xiao Qie had killed Lei Chongming in Suzhou. Then they got wind that Shen Zichuan had taken down Cai Yu in Chazhou. After that, it wasn't long before news came of Lei Jingzhe's demise in Dunzhou. All the major bandit leaders in Zhongbo had met terrible ends at Shen Zichuan's hands. It didn't take brains to figure this out. Even if they were thinking with their little toe, they could see Shen Zichuan would never let them off. Yang Cho doubted Hua Lingyun was qualified to handle this mess. He had come to fish in troubled waters, hoping to haul King Yi's money vault away before the city walls were breached. But when he arrived, he found Fong the 10th and the rest had the same idea. Everyone was sitting here cooking up their own schemes, each of them anxious for the others to hurry up and die. Although Hua Lingyun was ostensibly their leader, he didn't mind feigning weakness. Face expressionless, he said, "There's no need to be anxious. Shen Zichuan sent an old man without any prestige or ability. Look how fast he ran last night. He's timid. He won't get far." It was true Yin Chong had no reputation to speak of, but at the same time, he had disposed of nearly half their soldiers the first time he'd appeared on the field. Hua Lingyun himself had gone out to fight in last night's battle, but he kept what he saw to himself. All Yang Cho and Fong the 10th knew was that they had suffered heavy casualties. Yang Cho thought Hua Lingyun no more than a pretty face, without much use beyond his looks. Even so, he smiled as he said, "That's right. Brother Hua comes from a distinguished family. The hell would some backwater blusterer like Yin Chong know? I'm only worried about food, nothing else. If we keep going through provisions like this, we won't last till spring, even if we do manage to beat back the Suzhou garrison." "So what do you have in mind?" Fong the 10th said contemptuously. "Let's hear your brilliant ideas, good sir." Yang Cho rolled his eyes and looked at Hua Lingyun. "Yan Heru still has shops in Duanzhou. Let's trade in King Yi's family assets for grain. He's the type who holds no sentiment for anything but cold, hard cash. He's sure to help us. As long as we can survive the winter, the throne is as good as yours. It won't be too late for us to recruit soldiers and buy horses when the snow melts." Fong the 10th listened to Yang Cho paint this rosy picture and didn't say a word. Hua Lingyun was exactly the kind of young man he liked, but he had seen King Yi's mutilated corpse at the Yamen, gnawed by dogs until it was unrecognizable. He couldn't help but fear he would share the same fate. After spending 6 months chained to King Yi's side, Hua Lingyun knew very little of the situation outside Fanzhou. Seemingly convinced, he asked, "But with the garrison troops laying siege to the city, how are we to conduct business with Yan Heru?" Yang Cho had an answer to this as well. "My people are familiar with Dunzhou. Lei Jingzhe's old subordinate, Liu Er, had eyes on the ground there. I can talk to them. Yang Cho had been involved with Sui Qing and tagged along with her to Dunzhou for business in the past. If Brother Hua is willing to trust me, I'll gladly make the trip for you. Fong the 10th instantly turned hostile. Oh, so you've got it all plotted out, huh? Just like that, they were at each other's throats, neither one willing to concede. King Yi's wealth would set any of them up for life. No one was willing to share with the others. The atmosphere instantly became tense. Unable to refute Fong the 10th with words, Yang Cho grew more antsy the longer he sat among them, worried Hua Lingyun would collapse under the next assault from Suzhou's garrison troops. He steeled himself and made up his mind. He would kill them all and grab the money tonight. Oh. Okay. Well, that's a plan. Blue, you said, I feel like it's when Hua Lingyun feigns weakness that everybody should be afraid. That's a good point. On the city wall, a Fanzhou soldier was relieving himself in the corner when he heard a series of whistles from below. He fastened his pants and, not daring to stick his head out, peered down from the gap between the merlons. A bonfire was blazing on the field outside. The Suzhou garrison troops had taken formation before the city walls, with their shields raised, yet had not sounded the war horn. Yin Chong stood at the very front. He took a few gulps of wine and shouted, Is King Yi home? Call him onto the wall. Let's have a little chat. The memory of being practically filleted by the sharp blades of the dagger squad the night before was still vivid in the minds of Fanzhou's troops. The white-haired old general had come after them like a maniac. It was an encounter they wouldn't soon forget. The platoon commander on the walls, a bandit who reported to Yang Cho, had been specially assigned here by Hua Lingyun. He leaned over the battlement and spat at Yin Chong. Chat my ass. You think we're idiots you can trick out of the city? Not to be outdone, Yin Chong cursed right back. Fucking wimps, the lot of you. Sniveling little cowards like you aren't fit to kiss my ass. Bah, brats. You think your balls are big enough to fight battles? Get your asses down here and lick our governor's shoes. Yin Chong, having spent much time on the streets in his youth, spewed every obscenity that came to mind. Fortified by the wine, he could stand there and curse a blue streak for 3 days and nights without repeating himself once. His speech was crude to the extreme, and when he got particularly excited, he led the garrison troops to chant profanities with him. All in all, he had such a merry time, it was as though New Year had come again. The platoon commander was accustomed to throwing his weight around in Dongzhou while working under Yang Cho. In Fanzhou, even King Yi had treated him with courtesy. He was still seething from being chased all over by Yin Chong the night before. He'd even gotten stabbed in the buttocks. He leaned over the battlement and let loose a torrent of verbal abuse. The moment the platoon commander retorted, Yin Chong waved a hand, and the Suzhou garrison troops behind him hollered back a litany of curses. The platoon commander couldn't beat them in numbers, and his voice was quickly drowned out. Furious, he pounded the wall and commanded, Arrows! The instant the Fanzhou troops raised their bows, the Suzhou garrison troops below took to their heels. They had come ready with shields, and they cursed as they fled while Fanzhou's arrows clattered down on them. Once they were out of range, they turned back around and booed the soldiers atop the city walls. Yin Chong leapt back into arrow range and raised both hands, the signal for the Suzhou garrison to sound the war horn at the back. The old man's ruddy face was glowing as he yelled, These damned Fanzhou cowards. The Suzhou garrison troops called back, Are as chicken as they come. Yin Chong shouted again, And stray King Yi's. A fucking dog, the soldiers finished. Fanzhou's arrows could not reach them. Soldiers of all ranks leaned over the battlements, trying to get their own swears in, to little effect. Yin Chong had even composed a short ditty for the Suzhou garrison troops, which they howled at an ear-splitting volume from where they stood. Half of the platoon commander's body hung over the battlement as he cussed until he was red in the face. He bellowed across the night air, Shut the fuck up, you old buffoon. I'll slice off all your rotten tongues. Bring it on. Yin Chong seemed to be drunk as he stomped through the snow and turned in circles, clapping. If you don't come down here like you oughter, like you ought to, I'll make every last one of you my daughter. Ha! Okay, I wonder what that said in Chinese. He pinched his fingers together like a mincing lady and twisted to look back at the platoon commander on the wall, imitating him in a shrill voice. I'll slice off all your rotten tongues and tear your faces off, too. Yin Chong was advanced in years, the wrinkles on his face as layered as petals on a flower. Yet his imitation of a woman was spot on. He had that elusive feminine charm down pat as he stomped his foot and sent shards of ice skittering over the frozen ground. The platoon commander's face went blue, then chalky white. Fanzhou's troops were composed of men from all over the two prefectures. They couldn't truly be considered fellow soldiers at all. Sworn enemies and bitter adversaries had been thrown haphazardly into a squad together, and now half of them were snickering behind the platoon commander's back upon seeing him made a fool of. Ugh, I love this. I don't know what the plan is here, but I love it. The platoon commander had never been so humiliated. He shoved the soldier next to him aside and roared, "Prepare my horse." The soldier hurried after him. But Hua... The platoon commander yanked the soldier up and barked, "Fuck him. I'm Chief Yong's right-hand man. Hua Lingyun was still wetting his pants when I was killing the garrison troops in Dongzhou. You think he's fit to give me orders? Bring the muskets." The sight of Yin Chong scampering away like a frightened rat from the muskets last night was still fresh in the platoon commander's mind. They had lost half their men in that battle after Yin Chong had broken their formation. But tonight, the city walls of Fanzhou were right behind them. They were bursting with confidence. At worst, they could simply retreat behind the wall. What was there to be afraid of? They had horses. They could speed back to the city wall and let loose some arrows. If Yin Chong still dared to pursue them then, he would be courting death. Yin Chong hitched up his trousers, then reached for the hilt of his blade. He was serious now, his cloudy eyes as quiet as the expanse of the night sky as he adjusted his breathing. This was a technique he'd taught himself. As long as he steadied his breathing before a battle, he could stand firm on his feet. There were all kinds of gifted generals in the world. Many were young, not only ambitious, but dazzlingly brilliant. Yet there was another kind of general, the type who had gone their whole lives without making a name for themselves. They stood always with their backs to the sky, because their eyes were planted firmly on the small piece of land beneath their feet. Yin Chong was old. The instant the city gates opened, Yin Chong felt a rush of fighting spirit course through his body. It was the desire that had burned in him his whole career until this day. What ravages of time, what old age. He was still so young. The fervor that blazed in him now allowed him to maintain the speed of his draw without the slightest stall. Even if he was no famous general, he would win one battle. That's the end of the chapter. We are on chapter 199, which is called Triumphant Return. Yang Qiu strode out of the yamen. As he stood under the eaves waiting for his carriage, he spotted the commoners seeking refuge from the wind. Finding them inauspicious, he spat on the ground and rubbed it out with his foot. "Are you people dead?" he snapped to the subordinates around him. Hua Lingyun has an excuse for his ignorance. Do you? These people are crawling with disease. By the time the infection spreads through the yamen, it'll be too late for you to cry. The men rushed out fearfully, hurrying to drive the commoners away. Yang Qiu boarded the carriage and closed his eyes to rest, fuming as he recalled the earlier conversation. Midway through his journey, his subordinate called through the curtain, "Chief, there's news." Yang Qiu opened his eyes. "Go ahead." Fong the Tenth has not returned to his residence, the subordinate said. He shook off his tail, then switched carriages and made a beeline for the vault. Yang Cho yanked the carriage curtain aside and glared. Fearing he had already lost his opportunity to claim the vault, he ordered, "Quick, gather our men." In less than an hour, the subordinate was back with another report. The Suzhou garrison troops had attacked the city. The platoon commander had charged out with the musket, but the embroidered uniform guard was waiting right under the walls. The man only made it a few lengths before they snapped his neck clean off. This turn of events was so unexpected the city gates weren't shut in time. Fanzhou's banners atop the city wall were already burning. Yang Cho's face turned deathly pale at this news. He gripped the carriage door and looked toward the city walls, where fire was raging against a backdrop of indigo clouds. Half of the 4,000 men Yang Cho had brought from Dongzhou had gone to fill vacancies on the city walls. At first, in order to have a hold over Hualing Yun, he had arranged to place the fiercest men under his command there. He hadn't expected them to be so easily killed by the garrison troops. Yang Cho flew into a rage. Is the dumb bastard out of his mind? The hell is he defending the city for? It's not even my fucking city. Take your weapons and get to the vault now. If you come across that old Fong dog, hack him to pieces on sight. Once you've loaded up the money and treasure, get out of there. A flurry of footsteps echoed throughout the city as the bandits' boots trampled the icy slush. Mud spattered the legs of their pants and streaked the hems of their robes as they ran. Whistles from all directions fused into a single shrill wail. No one could tell who was who when the gangs collided in the streets, and no one stopped to ask questions as they rushed frantically to draw first blades and cut each other down. Puddles of blood cooled in the snow. The bandits, slavering over King Yi's treasure, had gone feral. When Yang Cho barged into the vault, he found stacks upon stacks of chests. He pried open the nearest one, which was filled to the brim with dazzling gold ingots. For a moment, the bandit was frozen in place, unable to move an inch. Then he scooped the ingots into his arms and wept with joy. King Yi is so fucking rich. Shen Zichuan's chokehold on the northwest of Zhongbo had left Yang Cho feeling increasingly suffocated. Now he could break out of Shen Zichuan's control, even if he had to smash his way through with gold. Get these chests out of here quick. Yang Cho stared fixedly at the gold in his arms. Get them all onto the wagons. Yang Cho's wagons were parked within the vault's courtyard, but there were too many chests, and they were all exceedingly heavy. His people had only moved half of them before the wagons were packed full. Unwilling to leave anything behind, he instructed his subordinates to go steal more wagons. Fong the Tenth was next to arrive, shouting orders the moment he got off his carriage. Waving a handkerchief, he yelled, "Stop him! Don't let him leave!" The door to the vault was narrow. A great number of bandits, hoping to steal a piece of the treasure for themselves, had hidden gold in their clothes while they were inside. Yang Cho slashed them to death when he noticed their bulging pockets. The man had lost his mind. He couldn't tolerate anyone challenging him for the money. Just as they were moving the last chests, Fong the Tenth's wagons entered from the back and got tangled up with Yang Cho's convoy, completely blocking the courtyard entrance. Fong the Tenth leapt his way across the wagons and landed in the courtyard, waving for his men to follow. They hacked at every one of Yang Cho's men they could see. Yang Cho's subordinates were crammed between the carts, their hands full with the heavy chests. They didn't stand a chance. One slash of the blade, and they toppled over dead. "Sneaky son of a bitch," Fong the Tenth cursed. "Give me back my money." Wiping blood off his face, Yang Cho kicked the vault door open and charged out with blade in hand, slashing left and right. The space instantly became a sight of slaughter. Blood stained every wooden chest crimson. The carts at the back jostled against one another, knocking over any chests still unsecured. Rocks tumbled over the ground. "Rocks?" someone shouted. Are these fucking rocks? Yang Cho and Fong the Tenth froze where they stood. Both turned to look at the scattered stones. Panicked, Yang Cho abandoned the fight. He lunged at the nearest wagon and smashed a chest open, only to find that it, too, was filled with rocks. Among the dozen or so wagons, only a few chests contained gold, while the rest were packed with stones and gravel. Yang Cho's legs went weak as chest after chest was broken open. He braced himself against the side of the wagon, his eyes so red they were about to drip blood. Fong the Tenth frantically looked around. We've been had. The wagons at the entrance of the courtyard suddenly smashed through the door. A moment later, the courtyard door banged shut. A greasy liquid poured down the insides of the walls. One bandit took a sniff, and the color promptly drained from his face. Oil. Break down the door. Fong the Tenth squeezed between the wagons and pushed his way toward the entrance, yelling, "Quick, break it down." Carefully treading through the snow, Hua Lingyun edged along the top of the wall. His hands had turned blue in the freezing night, but it didn't stop him from striking the flint. Yang Cho turned at the sound. "Hua Lingyun, you son of a bitch." Hua Lingyun was clutching a sheaf of yellowed papers. Notices King Yi had posted outside the Yamen. He touched that bundle of lies to the tinder. Bathed in the glow of the flames, he said, voice dripping with revulsion, "Go to hell." Tongues of flame licked toward the sky as the fire swept through the courtyard in a roaring wave. The dummy chests contained not only rocks, but also dry, flammable grass. The flames engulfed the bandits in seconds. Yang Cho and Fong the Tenth struggled in the blaze, rolling on the ground and cursing Hua Lingyun amid blood-curdling screams. Y'all, what is happening? Something blood money or blood rocks. You are correct, Blue. This is amazing. Henry, I will be saying, bring the muskets at every minor inconvenience. That's beautiful. I love that. I love that, and I love this. Just we've got muskets, we've got fire, we've got fake gold, we've got schemes and tricks. Hua Lingyun watched the fire hungrily. The sound of crackling flesh was exhilarating, like the pop of belated firecrackers. He roared with laughter as the stench of charred flesh rose up with the smoke, his eyes as bloodshot as his victims. Burn. He would burn this scum to death. What a great character, and we only were just introduced to him, what, last time? Like, this is crazy. Like, new favorite character. Power and influence were a crock of shit. All he desired was for every last one of them to pay with their lives. From King Yi to Cui Qing, from Yang Cho to Fong the Tenth. Not a single one of them will go free. Unable to escape, the bandits pounded on the walls and wailed beneath the gouts of flame. The oil soaked their clothes, and the inferno tore away their hair and crisped their faces into unrecognizable char. The fire spilled out of the courtyard, leaping along the eaves of the houses until all of Fanzhou was ablaze. Who's setting the city on fire? Yin Chang, dragging the platoon commander's head in one hand, jumped up and down from frustration. The governor will have to pay for the damages if it's burnt. Fei Sheng wiped blood off his saber and looked up toward the firelit sky. Internal strife, huh? The Suzhou troops had breached the city gates, yet no one had come to aid the Fanzhou soldiers guarding the wall. Discouraged and fatigued, they couldn't even shoot their arrows straight. The moment they saw their platoon commander killed, they gave up any attempt at resistance. Fei Sheng shook off his distraction and looked pointedly at the embroidered uniform guard behind him. A signal to search the city and seize the muskets. Here we go. Here we go. Yin Chang's tirade earlier had left him thirsty. He insisted on drinking a few gulps of wine now that the battle was as good as won. He scratched his cheek and held the still warm head out to Fei Sheng as though giving him a gift. Take him. Keep him well. Fei Sheng darted out of the way to avoid the blood. Why the hell are you carrying that thing around? Still holding his treasure, Yin Chang said with a roguish laugh. Hand it over to the governor when we get back. It's evidence of our military achievement. A chill ran down Fei Sheng's spine as he imagined the scene. Shen Zichuan sitting in the front hall, all in white, as this gory head was passed to him. If a drop of blood touched so much as the edge of Shen Zichuan's folding fan, they could kiss their lives goodbye. He hurriedly took the platoon commander's head and, while Yin Chang was busy with his drink, shoved it into the hands of a soldier with orders to bury it. Sure enough, the Sizhou garrison troops returned in triumph. Zhou Gui met them outside the city gates with a welcome party. As encouragement for the new soldiers, he had cooks prepare a spread of roast meat and grilled fish to fill their stomachs after their long march. While the soldiers stopped at the gates to wait, the commanding general entered the city to see the prefectural governor. Yin Chang hadn't dared to take a single sip of wine today. He followed Fei Sheng into the prefect's manor. The door to the study was wide open, and Kong Ling and the others were already standing on the steps. As soon as they entered, Kong Ling came forward to welcome them. Elder Yin. Kong Ling smiled at the old general. A warrior's treasured blade truly never rusts. Looks like you still have it in you. Yin Chang knew Kong Ling well. Craning his neck toward the door, he asked quietly, The governor is inside? Waiting for you. Kong Ling ushered them up the steps. Yin Chang always went weak at the knees when he met officials. The governor personally assigned you this command, Kong Ling reassured him. There's no need for me to tell you what that means. Just answer any questions his lordship asks. Don't worry. Fei Sheng spoke up beside them. I'll help Elder Yin so he doesn't trip over himself before his lordship. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned the possibility. The moment he did, Yin Chang's legs turned to jelly. He placed his hands on the steps for support in a panic, then scrambled to his feet with an oh my and demanded, What's his lordship going to ask? What if I can't answer? Kong Ling turned back and was about to reply when Yin Chang's 2-month-old body odor hit him full in the face. He was so dizzy he couldn't remember what he was going to say. Earlier, he had been standing upwind and didn't notice the smell. They were already standing in front of the hanging screen. It was too late to back out now. Kong Ling threw Fei Sheng a look. Why didn't you remind Elder Yin to take a bath? That was in his head. In the look, if you will. Fei Sheng almost choked on all the unvoiced grievances stuffed up inside him. He wanted to respond. What was I supposed to do if he refused? This crafty old coot had an endless stream of excuses at his disposal. The winter was too cold, he'd said. It was more practical to be dirty since they had to march to war. The layer of grime would prevent their feet from freezing. Wasn't it all hogwash? The screen had already been lifted, so Kong Ling had no choice but to enter. Out of habit, Yin Chang lifted his foot to stride across the threshold, only to realize that this doorway had none. To accommodate Yao Wenyu's wheelchair, Shen Zichuan had long since instructed the servants to remove the thresholds inside and outside the manor. Yin Chang gingerly set his foot down and shuffled in. Shen Zichuan had seen Yin Chang before, but only from a distance. Back when the garrison troops had yet to be reestablished, it was the Imperial Army who had fought the bandits from Mount Law. Later, when the garrison troops began recruitment, Shen Zichuan had been constantly away and out of the city. The two men could just barely recognize one another. Today, Shen Zichuan was wearing a wide-sleeved robe over his regular attire as he sat in the seat of honor, the color so crisply white he seemed to radiate a pure and ethereal glow. Kong Ling began, Your Lordship, this is... Before he could finish, Yin Chang had dropped to his knees. A series of heavy thuds rang out as the old man kowtowed repeatedly toward Shen Zichuan. The whole thing's already gone to hell, Fei Sheng thought as he knelt to kowtow as well. He raised his head and hurried to help Yin Chong up. The advisors entering behind them had no idea what was going on. When they saw the general kneeling, they assumed the governor must be furious. They followed suit and knelt as well. The atmosphere in the hall had taken a strange turn. Fan dangling from one hand, the allegedly furious prefectural governor swallowed his words of congratulations, his greeting cut off by their kowtows. He floundered for a moment, unsure whether to remain seated or stand up. Yao Wenyu was quickest to react. Seated in his wheelchair, he bent over and spoke gently to Yin Chong. Elder Yin braved a fierce battle and narrowly escaped death. It's natural to feel overwhelmed upon seeing his lordship. But your triumphant return today is a joyous occasion. Let us not be so somber. Right. Blue, as you said, it's funny to see the other side from time to time and how terrified these people are of Shen Zichuan. They really are. His words were wisely chosen. He indirectly praised Shen Zichuan's judicious selection of a general, inspiring such gratitude in the old man that he was moved to tears. At the same time, he also made it clear to the advisors behind him that this master and servant pair was on good terms with each other, and all was well. Shen Zichuan finally found his voice again. The journey must have been difficult indeed. Fei Sheng, hurry and assist Elder Yin. Gentlemen, please rise and take your seats. Fei Sheng helped Yin Chong up. But how would Yin Chong have the courage to look at Shen Zichuan? He approached him with the same caution he did the enemy troops and didn't dare even breathe too loud. Kongling was torn between laughter and tears. What had initially been a relaxed and cheerful atmosphere had been destroyed by one misstep from Yin Chong. Now everyone was afraid to so much as smile. Fortunately, Shen Zichuan was adept at controlling the atmosphere in the hall. He lowered his voice and took an unusually gentle tone as he asked Yin Chong about their food and clothing while on the move, and about the weather on their journey back. After a series of such unhurried exchanges, Yin Chong's answers flowed much more smoothly. At this point, Shen Zichuan began to question him more closely about the battle. Fei Sheng had hoped Yin Chong's body odor would go unnoticed, but the smell was simply too strong. If the old man wanted to skip baths for 2 months, that was his business. But on top of that, they had just returned from the battlefield and reeked of blood, a stench amplified by the heat in the hall. Yu Xiaozai, seated next to Kongling, was listening politely to their conversation when he caught a whiff. Distracted, he attempted to identify the scent. It bore a strong resemblance to rancid rice mixed with unwashed feet. Yet it also recalled salted fish soaking in swill. Oh, why do they have to describe it like that? It was a smell unlike anything he had ever come across. A truly one-of-a-kind odor. What was more, this odor, sharp and intense, was a force to be reckoned with. In no time it pervaded the entire hall, such that Fei Sheng, with his acute sense of smell, was close to passing out. Shen Zichuan's expression remained unchanged throughout. Anyone else could subtly cover their nose with their sleeve, but not Shen Zichuan. Yin Chong had conquered a city for him. If he revealed any hint of disdain here, he would surely wound the old man's feelings. Moreover, in consideration of the defeat that had come before success, the rewards accorded to Yin Chong were modest, at least on the surface. If Shen Zichuan covered his nose, it would give those beneath him free rein to belittle Yin Chong. Unaware of the suffering he was causing, Yin Chong gesticulated wildly as he exclaimed over the firearms in Fanzhou, his excitement increasing as he rambled on. Xiao Qie, who had been staying at the Beiyuan training grounds for the past few days, was late to arrive. He had ridden over specifically to meet this old man when he heard of his triumphant return. He made his way under the eaves, but, so as not to interrupt, signaled to the attendant not to announce his arrival. Gu Jin was helping Xiao Qie remove his cloak when his nose twitched, and an expression of horror came over his face. "What's wrong?" Xiao Qie asked in puzzlement. Before Gujin could respond, they heard a clang from inside the hall, followed by Yu Xiaozai's panicked cry. Now, why in tarnation did he faint? Not tarnation, not why in tarnation. Fei Sheng, upon hearing Xiao Qie arrive, had panicked. Xiao Qie was sure to catch a whiff of the reek the moment he entered. The person sitting right beside Yin Chang was Shen Zichuan. Fei Sheng couldn't afford to shoulder the responsibility should he take ill due to the stench. Yin Chang had fought a winning battle, so nobody would blame the old man. That meant that they could only settle the score with Ol Fei the 10th. This was inevitable. It was just his rotten luck to be the one assigned to the campaign. Everyone in the hall was close to keeling over, and Fei Sheng was about to be wrongly prosecuted for their deaths. Thus he took one for the team. He collapsed in a heap and played dead before Shen Zichuan. I cannot deal with this right now. Shen Zichuan immediately lifted his folding fan and adopted the impressive air of a commander leading a magnificent army. With perfect composure, he instructed, "Help him to the side hall and call for the physician. Elder Yin, you must be tired after your long journey. Chung Feng, send someone to prepare hot water. Once Elder Yin has properly bathed and rested, we can start the banquet." There we go. That's how you do it. The moment Yin Chang heard the word bathed, he jumped in alarm. "Your lordship, I don't." From outside, Xiao Qie called out, "Qiao Tianya." "Got it." Qiao Tianya ducked inside and hoisted Yin Chang over his shoulder. He laughed boisterously as the old man struggled in his grip. "Happy New Year, Elder Yin. Time to wash up." The gentlemen in the hall were so relieved, they didn't wait for the word from Shen Zichuan before hurrying to throw open the windows. The rush of cool air on their faces felt so refreshing, everyone simultaneously sucked in a long, deep breath. And that's the end of the chapter. Lanzhou is stronger than all of us. Yes, Henry, you are correct. Soaking in swill was some great alliteration. I'm going to be saying "why in tarnation" now. That is just a beautiful phrase. Also, hi, Zareem. Yeah, it's just, I love it. I love it so much. I believe we have one more chapter today. Yep, we are on chapter 200, Clandestine Affair. No one had expected it would take nearly 4 hours for Yin Chang to bathe. The gentlemen in the study waited until they were famished. Yu Xiaozai's eyes drifted time and time again to the snacks on the table, his stomach growling. At last, Shen Zichuan extracted himself from a discussion of Sizhou's affairs and turned to him. "Yojing, when we mobilize troops to Duanzhou in the 2nd month, Duanzhou will serve as a supply depot. Tantai Hu is unfamiliar with the workings of the Yemen there, so I'm sending you to keep an eye on things. You'll have the authority of inspection and oversight. If anything crops up, don't bother going through the relay stations. Send the report directly to my desk." In Chudu, Yu Xiaozai had been a censor in the Chief Surveillance Bureau and a student of the left censor-in-chief, Sen Yu. He had spent his early years serving as a touring censor and had often been dispatched to inspect government operations in the regions outside of the capital. As such, he was more familiar than most with the ins and outs of the local Yemen. Shen Zichuan was re-establishing Duanzhou's administration, and the key functionaries there were all fresh faces from Sizhou. They were not yet reliable. Yet he was not sending Yu Xiaozai to Duanzhou as a censor. Instead, he was merely giving him the authority of oversight and direct report associated with this office. Although Yu Xiaozai had no official title, his position would carry considerable weight. His responsibilities were equivalent to the old position of Zhongbo's surveillance commissioner, who had overseen the review of each prefecture's local administration. Yu Xiaozai hurriedly redirected his gaze from the snacks and rose to bow to Shen Zichuan. Duanzhou is still unsteady on its feet, Xiao Qie said. He had taken his seat beside Shen Zichuan. Tantai Hu holds a military post. He's not supposed to interfere with the Yemen. But we have a severe lack of manpower. We can't worry about the strict division of duties right now. Tantai Hu is a tad obtuse in this area, so he'll need you to advise him as much as you can on the larger issues. Tantai Hu is a trusted subordinate of Xiao Qie. Sending him to Duanzhou was essentially a demotion, but Zhongbo was severely lacking in generals. They couldn't do without him. Moreover, given his background, no one in the Duanzhou Yemen would dare defy Tantai Hu. Xiao Qie was therefore throwing his weight around behind Yu Xiaozai as well. With Xiao Qie's support and an appointment from Shen Zichuan, Yu Xiaozai would have no one to fear when he made his rounds in Duanzhou. And if he should be assigned to other prefectures in the future, his work in Duanzhou would bolster his position. Yu Xiaozai was practically radiating glee, but it wouldn't do for him to show it. He held his joy in check and bowed again to both of them. This humble subject will certainly do my best to honor my lord's kindness. His answer was loud and clear, but so was the next rumble from his stomach. The resulting duet was so resounding the whole study was stunned into silence. The celebratory banquet for the garrison troops is tonight. Shen Zichuan saw it was already getting dark. I shan't hold you gentlemen back. Let's start the feast. The feast was laid in the side hall. Shen Zichuan took his place in the host's seat, but Xiao Qie had just returned, and Yin Chong still had yet to show himself. He sat for only a short while as a gesture of appreciation before taking his leave. Most of those present were his advisors, and they didn't dare drink or let loose in Shen Zichuan's presence. Once the prefectural governor retired for the night, they would be more at ease. Chao Tianya had carried off Yin Chong, and with no one hovering over him, Yao Wenyu was unable to turn down the warm invitations of his fellow advisors to share toast after toast. By the time Chao Tianya returned, he was slightly tipsy, leaning back in his chair as he laughed and chatted with Gongling and Gao Zhongxiong. I love that. Does that mean that when Chao Tianya is around, he's there to be like, Yao Wenyu, you can't drink that much. He didn't have anyone to control him. Catching him in such a rare moment of leisure, Chao Tianya paused outside the door. He let down the hanging screen and waited patiently under the eaves. There Fei Sheng caught sight of him. He beckoned him over and called through the fall of fine snow. Let's go. What are you standing here like a pole for? There's a table set up in the duty room. We're all waiting for you. Chao Tianya didn't move. He looked relaxed and unrestrained as he leaned against the doorpost. Has everything been arranged for Master? Of course it has. Fei Sheng strode over and peered through the gap in the hanging screen. These gentlemen tend to break up late. You won't miss anything if you come back after we're done. There are guards inside and out here. Everything will be fine. Chao Tianya thought for a moment, then lifted the screen. Yao Wenyu glanced over at once, as if sensing his waiting presence outside. After a short pause, Chao Tianya lowered it again. I still have a few jars of fine wine in my room. Send someone to fetch them. Consider it my apology to everyone for my absence. Fei Sheng was still for a moment. Who cares about that old wine of yours? Come on. Master released us from duty, yet you're still lingering here. He had already had a few cups and was more talkative than usual. Master assigned me to recruit new members for the embroidered uniform guard a few days back. Did you hear about it? Chao Tianya folded his arms over his chest and eyed Fei Sheng. Sure. Fei Sheng pointed at himself, then at Chao Tianya. Holding back a belch, he said, I'll be honest with you. Master has his eyes on you to lead the cavalry he wants to build in Duanzhou, since you're pretty good at fighting at all. What are you doing with yourself? You follow Yao Wenyu around as though you've forgotten your roots. If you go on like this, you'll sabotage your own future. Snow had gathered on the hilt of Chao Tianya's saber. He looked out into the courtyard and said absently, This is where my future lies. You worry too much. The Grand Mentor himself gave you to our master. Fei Sheng reminded him in hushed tones, frustrated at Qiao Tianya's lack of concern for his own career. The day Master took you in was the day he received Avalanche. Qiao Tianya had once sworn to be Shen Zichuan's blade. Courage, insight, temperament, physical prowess, he had them all. Had he been willing, he could have become for Shen Zichuan in Zhongbo the same kind of right-hand man as Zhao Hui and Chen Yang in Li Bei. His future would be bright, his prospects boundless, and restoring his clan to its former glory would become more than just a dream. But ever since Shen Zichuan had assigned him to Yao Wenyu's side, he had lost his desire for such a future. The tasks Shen Zichuan had handed to Fei Sheng, recruiting new soldiers, accompanying Yin Chang's troops to Fanzhou, were all assignments Qiao Tianya no longer cared for. Qiao Tianya blew on the snowflakes drifting toward him and watched the wind instantly sweep them away to disappear into the pitch-black night. He left the snow on his blade untouched, and Fei Sheng unanswered. I love them. I love the little brief moments of Qiao Tianya and Yao Wenyu. Xiao Qia had removed his armor. He sat reading Fei Sheng's report on the details of the Fanzhou campaign, wearing only an inner robe. To think even King Yi could get his hands on muskets somehow. Was he more capable than we thought? 135 of them, Shen Zichuan said as he removed his wide-sleeved robe. All of them from the Chunchuan battalion. The serial numbers from the Ministry of War are still engraved on them. He was merely a mountain bandit without a proper army. Xiao Jia set his elbows on the armrests and watched Shen Zichuan undress. Who gave him such expensive trinkets? Shen Zichuan's outer robe slid over the skin of his wrists and pooled on the woolen rug. His day robe was fastened with pearl clasps, which made subtle popping sounds as he flicked them open to reveal his smooth, fair neck. He laid a hand over his nape, lost in thought. That is neck and nape. Double whammy. So unguarded was he in this moment. It was as if he wouldn't put up the slightest resistance, even if he were pinned down to the rug and ravished. There's no benefit for Chudu in letting those firearms slip from their grasp. They must have been stolen. Shen Zichuan's throat bobbed slightly when he spoke. Xiao Qia gazed at it without so much as a flicker of expression. He was exceedingly familiar with this sight. When he pressed himself against Shen Zichuan until they dripped with perspiration, Shen Zichuan had a habit of tilting his head back and exposing that tender throat. Xiao Qia was simply too tall. Even when Shen Zichuan was lying down, he had to crane his neck to meet Xiao Qia's kisses. Xiao Qia conjured up a dozen such scenes in his mind, but his placid expression betrayed nothing of what he was thinking. He unconsciously caressed his thumb ring, rotating it on his finger. I heard Yin Chang brought back a captive. King Yi's lover, a man surnamed Hua. Cheng Feng said he's the son of Hua Qing, the former commander of Dongzhou's garrison. Shen Zichuan glanced over at Xiao Qia. We can meet him tomorrow morning. This man used muskets to scare Yin Chang into retreating, Xiao Qia noted. He knows a thing or two, then. Someone must have taught him. Shen Zichuan released the last pearl clasp, and his day robe slid to the ground. The beauty, finally comfortable, kicked off his wooden clogs as he walked. His slender waist, no longer hidden by fabric, was silhouetted in the dim light. He was a priceless jade made flesh. Xiao Qia felt a rush of secretive pleasure. This sort of foreplay between them was something no others were privy to. The desire to occupy Lanzhou gradually swelled in his chest, filling it to the brim. Send a few muskets to Li Bei tomorrow morning. The military craftsman can take them apart to determine the design. He Rigu learned Yin Chang's formation just from watching back at the Beiyuan training grounds. He used it in our drills and gave me no chance to fight back. When we march on Duanzhou, I want Yin Chang to come along. Xiao Qia tossed Fei Sheng's report onto the desk. Shen Zichuan picked up a cup of tea to take a sip, then turned his gaze on Xiaoqia again and asked pointedly, "Will you not take me along?" "Sure I will," Xiaoqia said flippantly. "I've a tigress of a wife back home who keeps a tight leash on me. I can only steal a few moments of pleasure with you when we're on the move with the troops." Wickedness twinkled at the upswept corners of Shen Zichuan's eyes. "You have such a fierce wife. It scares me." Xiaoqia matched Shen Zichuan's tone. "Come now, I'm fierce too." Shen Zichuan held up the folding fan between their lips, playing the vixen. "I'm not afraid of you being fierce." Coyly, he said, "But you only come over once in a blue moon." Xiaoqia tilted his head slightly. "What can I do? I'm but a hen-pecked husband." "If it were me," Shen Zichuan lowered the fan. He leaned close to Xiaoqia's lips and murmured, "I would stay home all day longing for you, making love to you, stirring up a storm under the sheets." I'm going to have to immediately demonetize this video with the way things are going. Xiaoqia kissed him, muffling those shameless words as he pulled him onto the bed. He felt his way down Shen Zichuan's back, but found no foxtail. At this hour, the lamps had dimmed. The drapes around the bed had long since been let down. There was no one to interrupt them, yet their urgency was such that it really was as if they were having a clandestine affair. And that's where the chapter title comes from. They moved desperately against each other, biting back ragged moans. "But I want both of you," Xiaoqia whispered. Shen Zichuan had already been bitten to the point of tears, his cheek chafing against the sheets. Under Xiaoqia's heated gaze, he strained to look up with wet, shimmering eyes, and panted in a fit of pique, "You greedy cur!" Xiaoqia had spent nearly 2 months on the battlefield, and he'd been at the Beiyuan training grounds ever since he returned to Zizhou. Now, as he took hold of Shen Zichuan's chin to stare into his eyes, he chuckled lowly. "You're absolutely right." Shen Zichuan was taken ruthlessly by Xiaoqia. After so long, their coupling felt completely different. The change in Xiaoqia was evident in every movement. This time, there was no tenderness in his treatment of Shen Zichuan. Being so hungrily invaded, possessed from head to toe, made Shen Zichuan feel as if he'd surrendered completely, a captive to the conquering Xiaoqia. His heartbeats, his voice, his breath. Xiaoqia wanted all of Shen Zichuan. Even as he dominated him, he wanted more. Sweat and tears mingled on Shen Zichuan's face. He couldn't take any more. He could barely catch his breath. Yet Xiaoqia wanted even the tears he had yet to shed. Xiaoqia had once desired the sky and the grasslands. He desired the Hongyan Mountains. He had tamed falcons and horses, flying across the vast lands of his dreams. But he didn't want any of that anymore. He wanted Shen Zichuan. Shen Zichuan began to cry in earnest. He raised his head, his expressive eyes glistening, awash in emotion. As he tipped over the edge into euphoria, he murmured, "Ah, yeah." Xiaoqia thought he was afraid. But Shen Zichuan lifted his chin slightly, his face flushed, and licked his lips. His eyes were seductive and just as wild as the time he'd leapt into Xiaoqia's embrace from Fuxian Peak. "Oh, how I love you." Those words spurred Xiaoqia faster, and he kissed Shen Zichuan fiercely, gripping Shen Zichuan so tight he couldn't escape by even an inch, or break free of his hold long enough to breathe. Every thrust drove deeper. Shen Zichuan's body was racked with fine shivers. They abandoned themselves to pleasure in the dim lamplight, the sheets growing damp with their sweat, until there was nothing left but each other. Oh, I thought there was art for a second because I hit the next arrow to go to the next page and it didn't do anything. And I was like, oh, it's just loading. No, there's no art. I'm sorry to say. That's the end of the chapter. That is a way to end the stream. I was literally sitting here thinking, I was like, well, maybe this isn't too risque and I can just keep it monetized. And then it was like, nah, we're talking about thrusting now. I've got to turn it off on this video. We had a good run. Um, yeah, that truly was an ending to the stream. What a stream. We had the fire. We had a military success even against the people with the muskets. We had everybody on fire. They captured Hua, what's his name? Hua, no, I totally forgot his name. I'm sorry. But they captured Hua something, and that's going to be really interesting because I'm still kind of hoping that he is not really an enemy. I feel like he could be convinced to be on their side, but I don't really know what position he's going to take. So this is going to be really interesting. Um, oh, hi, Sarah. Oh, I'm glad you were able to catch it too. Um, yeah, so all of that happened, and then we end the stream with this. It's like the perfect little cap off. Not to mention we had body odor humor, apparently. That was not on my bingo card for Ballad of Sword and Wine was body odor humor and smelly feet. Yeah, Hua Ling Yun. I was thinking Hua Yun something. It's Hua Ling Yun. I will try to remember that. Also, I'm very curious what the character Hua, what character that is, because I know that Hua means fire, or I'm pretty sure it does. So it would be very funny if it was the same character for Hua or something that means, fire or blaze or something related to that. That would be beautiful. I know, not bathing for 2 months. It's like that's going into like extreme territory. And I don't know what the standard for how often you normally would bathe is, but it sounds like a lot of the characters bathe like almost every day. So that's crazy. You wouldn't think she can pull off adding a new character this late, but she really can. I feel like Tong Jo Ching could add a new character in the very last volume and it would still work. Like she could add someone at the last minute and she could still pull it off for sure. You will shame him for saying the grime keeps his feet warm. Absolutely valid. Yeah, hygiene was pretty good back then. If you remember correctly, Blue. No, that makes sense. Like judging from things in the story, it seems like it. Um, you need to borrow Liv's yell. I love when Liv just writes yell. Like it's great. It's so funny to me for some reason. Instead of like I don't know yelling, typing out a yell, just literally writing the word yell. It's perfect. It's very apt for many things. Um, so yeah, thank y'all for coming today. I will see you again on Wednesday. We will be on chapter 201, which is called Passions. So, judging by that chapter title, I don't know if the scene might be continued or what's going on there, but um, see you all on Wednesday for Passions. Um, bye.